All right guys, welcome back to the channel. So today's video, we're gonna be working on this 2017 Chevrolet Camaro. This one is an LT1 automatic car. This car was just purchased by the owner with everything unknown. So let's go ahead on and get it inside and see if we can figure out what all's done to this car. All right, so let's go ahead on and get this hood popped. So just like the other day, we have no idea what's done to this thing. This car was purchased exactly as it sits, and the customer just has some drivability issues. Primarily, they said that it feels like it's loading up at idle. So we got JLT cold air, MSD intake, KTEC 103 throttle body, got a set of long tube headers. The car is camshaft is unknown. So let's go ahead on and pull the file out of it and take a look at it, and then we'll start this thing up and data log it on its current file. All right guys, so just like the other day in the C7 Corvette video, we're gonna start this thing up and data log it and get an idea of where we're at as far as on the current tune. Kind of tough tuning one of these cars without knowing mods. I will tell you that the TCM is still locked. So that right there in itself is gonna make tuning drivability harder for me. I may could utilize driver demand tables to help it some, but without an unlocked TCM, I mean, I'm limited at what I can do. All right, so right off the bat, I'm noticing the VE table has been tuned and it's actually somewhat in the ballpark. Fuel trims actually look pretty good. Zero pedal torque is high, but ignition timing looks good. Manifold air pressure looks good. We're idling at 850, 900 RPM. Pulled the car in gear, car actually feels okay. Like it actually feels pretty solid. So, you know, a lot of this stuff actually looks a lot like the C7 Corvette. So let's go ahead on and I'm gonna look in this tune file real quick. First, let's start off with the VE table. Since if I haven't mentioned this before, Gen 5 vehicles heavily rely on the VE table to be accurate. So let's pull it up. Well, right away, kind of seeing a weird anomaly right here, which we're in manifold switch closed, which vehicle doesn't really reference, but that's kind of looks kind of weird. Well, let's go to manifold switch open. Okay. So just right away looks like we got some weirdness going on here. Make this bigger. Okay. All right, so that's kind of strange. Obviously, VE table shouldn't look like that. It's just got this big lack of fuel right here. I don't know. Kind of strange looking VE table. Let's go straight to the torque model. Right now, I've got a new operating system for a 2017 in the background. Torque model hasn't been touched. External load has been modified. Okay, so yeah, we got some work to do. All right, I had to go ahead on and shut the car off. Car's kind of loud. Windows are obviously pretty dark, but let's keep going. Let's just pull up the timing table. So it's got all of the timing in the mid-range for sure. It's probably a little excessive. Probably excessive timing pretty much anywhere. Let's see low octane. So low octane is just pretty much just pinned at the same amount. So they have, let me get these decimals set up straight. So they have all of the timing in this car right now. So that's not good. I don't think this car has flex fuel. Yeah, let's see. Fuel. It's showing a sensor should be on the car. Let me pull up Stoic. I mean, Stoic is set up for flex. Let me get out and see if it's got a flex fuel sensor on this thing. All right, so we do have a flex fuel sensor on the thing. Looks like they're adding 2 degrees for it. So realistically, it looks like looks like the car is just over timed for pump gas. I mean, timing's probably in the ballpark for E85 though. If you stack the high octane table here with the other, it'd probably make pretty good power on ethanol for sure. But on pump gas, I feel like the car would be pinging its ass off. So we've got some work to do. I wish I had trans control, but that's okay. Let's get the car up on the 4-post and look underneath it. All right, guys, change of plan. I want to go drive this car. My concern is, even though I do know that there's stuff in the tune that I can fix, I don't know if I'll be able to 100% cure drivability without having the TCM unlocked. I'm assuming this camshaft's pretty big. already it feels, doesn't really drive the greatest. The car just feels kind of jerky. I did notice that they made some driver demand changes, which usually on a car without having the TCM unlocked, it actually usually helps it quite a bit. But this car, I just don't like selling people on a tune if I can't, you know, make the car drive better. So obviously I know that there's some things I can change, and we know that the TCM needs to be unlocked for the car to really drive perfect. But I did notice it's got dealer tags on it, so maybe they're just trying to get it tuned, you know, to make it happy for a customer. But I may not have to sell them on a TCM unlock unless it's going to cause a major drivability issue. It's really kind of strange to me that somebody would, you know, cam it, MSD intake, 103 throttle body, all that stuff, and not do a TCM unlock. Almost makes me wonder if it had an unlocked TCM and they pulled it out and put this the stock TCM back in it before they sold it or traded it in. I'm not sure where this car come from. All right, so after driving it, basically I can tell that anything below 20 miles an hour, the car doesn't have the greatest drivability. I also look back through the messages, and it looks like they were complaining about excessive black smoke out the tailpipe. Fuel trims and stuff actually look halfway decent, so I'm gonna actually think that this is gonna be more based off of detonation. So this car, as you guys saw, it's severely over-timed for pump gas. So I think when they're getting down on it, I think the car's just detonating its ass off, honestly. So we're gonna go ahead and do a tune on this thing. We're gonna get some timing pulled out of it. We're gonna get the torque model set up correctly. I'm gonna sweep through the math, and we will set up the VE table like it's supposed to be. So we can definitely do some improvements on this thing. I just hope that I can completely solve the drivability concerns that the customer had. So I'm gonna try my best, but anyways, I'm gonna go ahead on and back this thing up onto the 4-post, and we'll slide underneath it. All right, so let's go ahead on and slide underneath the Camaro. Front tires look good. Stuff looks okay. I don't see any crazy oil leaks or anything like that. Got some headers. So that connects to the factory center part of the exhaust. Still has the DOD flappers in there, not a big deal. And then they straight piped it back here. Kind of small pipe though. I mean, that's like 2.5 at best. So it may have a little bit of a power loss there. So we got some lowering springs. Back tires look good. All right, let's get a wideband in this thing, get it down the dyno. So we're gonna go ahead on and sweep through all the idle stuff. Gonna make sure the tune is set up for the K-Tech 103. Gonna put a good VE table in here, or hope to try to guess at a good VE table. So let's go ahead on and work on this. So right now I've got a stock read file. This was from a previous car that we had done a fresh operating system on. So I know it's gonna be a good file for a 17A8. So what we're gonna do is I wanna idle this thing down just a little bit. So let's make this 225. So again, I'm comparing it to stock. So it'll be a total of 225 RPM over factory. So the same with the rolling idle. Now, because torque converter is unknown, I'm just going to move this up just 225. And then if it causes me drivability issues as we're rolling, then I can lower or raise these numbers however I need to. So part neutral start up. Let's make this 225. In gears also going to be 225. All right, so torque, we're going to put this stuff back to stock. And then I'm just going to move up just the axis itself. All right, so we're going to leave their MAF calibration alone for right now. Dynamic, I'm going to go ahead on and change the zone boundaries. That way the VE table comes out looking good. So again, on zone boundaries, what I found for me, you guys can play around with this, is I like making zones 0 through 1, I like making them 1750, 3 through 4, I like making them 5500, then I interpolate horizontally. P ratio boundaries, I like to just do this as 0.3, and then 0.9, and then interpolate vertically. And I will do the same thing for DOD. Even though we're not using it, I just like to be uniform in all of my changes. And then so while we've got that done, we'll just leave that alone for right now. I'll go ahead on and paste in a good VE table. Now again, I'm guessing that this camshaft's reasonable size, so this will be my VE table for right now. We'll have to look and see if it's anywhere in the ballpark. I honestly have no idea if it's going to be in the ballpark or not. But I'm gonna go ahead on and copy this to all 4. All right, so that is good. So speed density has been changed. I do think I have a note on what manifold volume is on the MSD. I'll have to go back and look. Okay, so throttle area limit has not been changed. So on the KTEC 103s, the number that I've found seems to work pretty good, 6243.5. I come up with that a long time ago just trying to look at CFM, and that's the number I determined. A lot of guys on the forums will say 7200, 7280, whatever. They'll just talk about maxing it out. It's just when I do the math the way I feel like it should be done, this is the number I come up with, and every car I've tuned, this seems to work good. So I'm gonna leave it just like that. Variable camshaft. So they're showing this camshaft would have a lot of retard in it. So I don't know what cam this thing has. I mean, unless they just locked it out and just disabled the code. I don't know. We're going to have to daylog the camshaft. I'm going to leave the camshaft stuff alone. I honestly doubt this is correct, but we'll check it. This car, it does have flex fuel on there. Again, I always change this because this is what the actual stoic point is. GM is 2/200ths richer on the stoic point. I don't know why. I just like to just use numbers that I know for a fact are good. Let's see, SOI has been changed. Let's see where they've changed it. So they've changed it up top, and they reduced it. So that looks promising. Man, after seeing those numbers, I almost know who tuned this thing last. I went ahead on disable long-term field trims. All right, we're going to put this thing into open loop. So to do that, you just go to this O2 readiness voltage and just type in a super low number. So I'll do negative 2048 because that's what it shows me to do right here. And I'll go ahead on and make this a really high number. This part right here shouldn't be necessary, but I have had some operating systems where it was actually necessary to make that change. One thing that I will show you guys, so if the car has headers, I have actually noticed that cruising down the road, if this right here is left alone, that if you left off the throttle, a lot of times it'll go like plus 37 on fuel trims and it'll actually go super rich. So I'm going to make this enable 255, make the disable 256. Moving this up to where the speed is not attainable, I've noticed that it's helped to eliminate the false positive fuel trims on decel. So I've tried messing around with the torque coefficients on deceleration fuel cutoff, and it seems to help sometimes, but that right there seems to be the fix. So anyway, it's going to move through all this stuff. Well, the enrichment ramp in and out, this setting, when y'all set these up this high, all it does is produce a shitload of black smoke. There is zero performance benefit. If y'all are doing it, you want to stick with it, go right on ahead. I will tell you that I have found in no instances where this actually helped, except for on force induction like Roots blower cars. This right here, what I've noticed causes is black smoke. So when you're laying into it, you get that massive cloud of black smoke. We don't need to be doing that. So again, you do you. I'm putting these back to stock. I have noticed zero negative effects keeping these stock. Otherwise, for right now, I'm going to leave everything else alone, except for they added a delay. Wait, so they added a power enrichment delay. So they added 400 millisecond delay, and then they turned up enrichment rate. I don't know. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I could just try to keep doing it the way that GM does it. So I'm putting this back to stock. I'm just going to go ahead and put all this stuff back to stock, except for torque. Like I've told you guys before, I like to do a TPS-based power enrichment. Get its personal preference. I just like it. All right, let's load this tune file in and see how it does. All right, so that tune file is loaded in. I went ahead and changed a couple other things, just basically putting in a good timing table, since obviously you guys saw that timing table was ridiculous for pump gas. I mean, you want to, if you're going to run ethanol, you need to have a good solid pump gas table and a good solid ethanol table. You don't need to have a table that the car basically needs ethanol to run correctly on. That's not what we need. All right, so right now letting the car warm up. I think I missed the mark on the V table just a little bit. This thing's probably going to end up taking the same or a similar V table to what that wrapped Corvette did. Otherwise, so far everything's looking good. Torque model is stock, so I wanted to kind of get an idea where we're at zero pedal engine torque wise. It's crazy, almost everything's lining up to what that wrapped Corvette had. That wrapped Corvette was off like 30 foot-pounds also at zero pedal torque. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead on and I'm gonna make a torque model adjustment. If you need a reference to what I do on the torque model stuff, I'll go ahead and link the video to the wrapped Corvette here. It's essentially my last video though. So I'm gonna go ahead on and make an adjustment so that you guys can see. I'll make this to where you can see it better, so you guys can see how far off I am on the V table. So basically I went from one extreme to the other. So I'm gonna go ahead on and make these changes. If you haven't seen how I do this calculation with VE airflow while we're actually in MAF only mode, it is one of my members only videos. So I always, in every video link, I have a link in the description on how to join members only. But basically, if you're my silver support member or above, you get to see the videos on this. This calculation is huge when it comes to getting one of these dialed in quickly. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead on and make a change and I'll be right back. All right, so VE table adjustment's been made. The MAF curve is still the same curve that was in the car in the original tune. It seemed like it was pretty spot on so far, at least as far as part throttle stuff goes. 0 pedal torque, I just did the 15% like what we did on the wrapped Corvette, and we're pretty much 0 to 6 foot-pounds, so that's looking good. So everything's looking good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the dyno into vehicle simulation mode, and we will start driving it, and I'll start doing some rips. All right, so dyno is set up in vehicle simulation mode. Let's go ahead on and drive this car and see what the MAF curve looks like. So far, I mean, obviously where I tune these cars so much, I've got a timing table in here that should be pretty close, pretty much regardless as to what camshaft it is. As long as heads aren't milled or something like that, we should be good. So far, MAF curve's looking pretty good. My VE table's a little bit off, nothing crazy. Obviously with unknown cam, I basically have to start from scratch again. All right, I'm gonna go ahead on and do a 4th gear rip. It's probably gonna spin if I had to guess, just because of me being in 4th gear and these tires look so-so. But anyways, let's go ahead on and do a little partial rip. Definitely spun. Car's a little bit rich. Nothing crazy though. See where I lifted off the throttle just a little bit. Or actually I didn't. Accelerator pedal still, I could have swore I lifted. Guess I didn't though. But anyways, car looked a little smoky out the back. It was a little bit rich. You guys can see where we're at on timing. That timing looks a bit excessive. I need to double check the modifiers, make sure they don't have some weird modifier set up. So all right, well, either way, the first pull looked okay-ish. We just got some work to do. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lean the MAF out. I'm gonna go over and make sure that, like I said, that timing is probably too much still. So I've got to figure out why this timing number is here, because it should have been more like 22.5. So I will do that and we'll be right back. Okay, I believe I've spotted the culprit. You guys may have saw it before I did, but look at this ethanol fuel. Showing 100%. So right here it was 9.8. As we were cruising, it was 9.8. And then mid-pull, it just all of a sudden shot up to 100. So I don't understand what would cause that. Car may have a faulty sensor. Come back down to 16% randomly right here, and come back up to 100. Don't think I've ever seen that one before. I guess I'll get out and check the wiring connection, make sure that's good, make sure nothing's chafed on it, but that's not good. All right, so just spoke with the customer and he's just gonna run on 93. So I'm gonna go ahead on and disable the flex fuel sensor and make sure that's squared away. So I adjusted the stoic to 14.10 to account for the roughly 9 or 10% ethanol, and disabled the sensor. And we'll do another pull and see how the MAF curve looks now. So it could be that the smoke and the ridge condition could have just been from where the car was trying to go over to 100% ethanol. So we will see. So disabling that, writing the tune in, and we're gonna try again. All right, tune file is loaded in. Flex fuel sensor has been disabled. So we're showing 0% ethanol fuel here now, which is correct for it being disabled. And I have the stoic point set to 14.1, just like it would be from the factory without a flex fuel setup. So tires hopefully should still be warm. So we're gonna go ahead on and do another rip to see how fueling looks like up top now. So it's still a little bit rich, but nothing near as bad as what it was. And you guys can see timing has definitely come back down. Manifold air temp is somewhat low, so I think this is a spot where the manifold air temp table is adding a little bit of timing. So this may work out good for this car, but honestly, this is probably going to be too much timing if I had to guess. Well, I'm going to go ahead on and make some adjustments to the MAF curve. I'm probably going to pull a little bit of ignition timing off the car, and we should be about ready to do some actual dyno pulls where we're actually reading power numbers. All right, so while I'm loading in that tune file, I am noticing the intake cam angle is actually moving. Looks like it's moving to a peak of about 4.7 degrees. So I'm gonna assume that this thing is actually, I don't know, maybe like something in the 220th cam duration, and it is VVT still. So maybe I don't know, maybe a prey cam or something. I'm not real sure. But either way, it looks like where we're, well, I can't show you right now, but where you guys saw earlier where it was commanding, you know, 8-10 degrees or something like that up top, I'm gonna assume that that is incorrect. We're just gonna keep doing rips. All right, tune file's loaded in. I just made that little change to the MAF curve. We're gonna do a dyno pull from 3,000 to 6,600 as long as everything looks good. I'm also gonna log the cam angle. I wanna see, as you guys saw, I saw in the data log that the cam was going up to like 4.5 degrees or so. Obviously they're commanding more than that. So I want to watch the desired angle versus error, and we may end up zeroing out VVT and then sweeping through by moving cam angle and try to figure out what this camshaft, whatever it is, we need to figure out what this cam likes on VVT. So let's go ahead on and get this thing up into 5th. So I do 5th gear pulls, wide open throttle. Hang on, this transmission's acting like it doesn't want to go into manual mode. Shifter feels funny too. All right, I'm gonna shut the car off and see what I'm gonna stop the data logger. I need the shifter to work right. It was working just fine just a second ago. I knew the shifter felt kind of funny, but it was working. There it goes. CTS-Vs used to do that. I don't know what's up with this thing yet. Chicken's light just come on. PO 700. Great. Okay. Maybe that's in the shifter. Either way, let's do a rip. Dyno slowing down. Car's really smoky on D-cell. Like, really smoky. Air fuel ratio looks pretty decent. So you can see our cam air, so where they were commanding for 9 degrees and the most it's getting is like 4.5. Yeah, I'm just gonna go on and say I bet this thing's got a 4-degree limiter in there. So we're just gonna tune this camshaft like it's got a 4-degree limiter in it. But let's get out and see what kind of power it made. All right, so power, kind of low. 411 horsepower, 382.9 foot-pounds of torque. So on a Dynojet, that'd work out to like roughly 450, 460, which is honestly not good at all. So again, we do have 2.5-inch exhaust at the very back where they did the muffler delete, so that could hurt us some. But what I'm gonna do, let's zero out variable cam timing and do a pull with no cam retard, and then sweep our way up. So we obviously only have 4 degrees of movement, but without knowing what camshaft's in here, we're just kind of shooting in the dark. So we're just gonna start from scratch. Only change I made is I made a very small fuel adjustment to the MAF, and I zeroed out the variable cam timing table. So this should be a fresh start. So theoretically the power should go down, and then we should need to put more timing retard in it, or yeah, more cam timing retard in it to actually make it happy. All right, let's do a rip. Fueling looks pretty good. this car is loud. The fueling looks pretty good. I mean, it's pretty much dead nuts on. You guys can see my active EQ air. It's pretty solid. So let's get out and see what kind of power. All right, so that pull it made 413.6 horsepower, 385.9 foot-pounds of torque. So as of right now, peak number did actually jump up a couple, even just by zeroing out variable cam timing. So let's look at the trace. And then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna add, all right, so here's the trace. The lighter red and the lighter blue is the pull that we just made. So again, we just moved the camshaft to 0. So it's basically like it's locked out. So like right here, 371 foot-pounds of torque to 386 foot-pounds of torque. So you're talking like 15 foot-pound torque gain. That's crazy. Now it tightens up top, but I mean pretty much everywhere, car makes more power with the camshaft 0, which is kind of strange, but again, that's why we test. All right, going over the tune, looking at the rail pressure, it's looking like this thing has a 32% fuel lobe. So I made that adjustment, made an injection timing change again, keeping ignition timing low. This thing does not seem to give a shit about ignition timing, which is totally cool with me. Tailpipes are looking clean now. So we're down, like I said, we're down to like 21 degrees up top, which is, on the smaller camshafts, it's usually what they want. So I just really expected this thing to have a bigger camshaft than what it is. If I had to guess, I'd almost think it's like one of the earlier Texas Speed VVT cams that they really didn't seem to work that good. I mean, it seems to work good as far as drivability goes and as far as like manifold vacuum and stuff like that, but power-wise, this camshaft just isn't doing what the modern LT cams do, that's for sure. Anyways, dyno is set up again. Like I said, this should be the final pull. We'll see. As long as everything looks okay on this data log, then I'll take it out on the street and finish it up. Yeah, as far as data goes, everything looks good. We're not getting excessive rail pressure up top anymore. Definitely a 32% lobe, so I made the adjustment to the tune. If you guys aren't sure what to do whenever you're doing a fuel lobe, I believe I showed you another video, but basically what you do is you go under fuel system, fuel pump, and then this leading edge angle, and then whatever size the fuel lobe is, you'll just multiply this. So I multiplied this whole thing by 1.32, and now the rail pressure looks like it's actually holding up top like it's supposed to. So anyways, let's get out and see if it's made a power change at all. This thing's kind of been in the 407 to 412 wheel horsepower range for like the last probably 4 or 5 dyno pulls now. So I doubt we're going to see a change. I'm just trying to make sure that the data looks good, and right here everything looks clean. I mean, we've pretty much nailed wide open throttle fueling. Yeah, so everything looks good on my end. So let's double check it on the dyno. All right, gonna be working on this is probably the final pull. I've swept through variable cam timing. I've moved air fuel ratio around. I've moved timing around. Honestly, I think it just comes down to this is just a small camshaft. So, I mean, the thing makes like 55 kPa at idle, which is, I mean, that's usually a sign of a really small camshaft or a really efficient lobe. But let's go ahead on and do another pull. And like I said, this should be the final pull. We'll see. I mean, the car's not making the power that I hoped it'd make, but honestly, I mean, it should be a good running car. Anyways, let's do a rip. All right, look at the data log. Everything looks clean. You'll see I'm down to, I mean, 21.5 degrees of timing. That's seems to be about what this thing wants, like from the look of the tailpipe and from the look of everything else. So whatever power it makes is what it makes, because this car, according to this data log and you know what I've seen coming out the tailpipe, this car is actually happy now. So anyways, let's get out and see what kind of power it made. All right, so this is going to be the final run compared to the first run. You'll see we're actually holding power out longer, and this is with a lot less ignition timing. I mean, we're making power pretty much everywhere. one thing I want you guys to understand is this is also with like 4 or 5 degrees less ignition timing. I tried to use a couple more degrees and the car really didn't give a shit. Like I said, the car has been pretty much within 4 or 5 horsepower the entire day. I've just been doing better at, you know, like this lower line right here is with their cam timing that they had. And you'll see where it dropped off like a rock up here. And this is basically with just the cam zeroed out. So I tried adding 2 degrees to it, or I tried retarding it 2 degrees. I tried retarding it 4 degrees. And the 0 degree line is actually best everywhere across the curve. Like I found no spot where it was better with any type of cam retard. So anyways, that last pull, 409.2 horsepower, 384.8 foot-pounds of torque. So again, the car is just, I mean, it's not necessarily like it's down on power, it just doesn't make a lot of power. So I would have assumed with that JLT intake and the 103 K-Tech and the MSD that this thing would have had a bigger camshaft in there, but it's just not working out that way. So again, I think this is just going to end up being one of like the older Texas Speed style camshafts or something similar, where just the LT technology just wasn't there yet. Because I don't know if you guys remember like the blue Silverado. I mean, it had the 225 cam on there, and it made like another, I don't know, it was like 20 or 30 more horsepower than this thing. So yeah, I just think it's just too small of a camshaft.